Well, hello. Welcome once again to Pale Blends and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Peppy Castro is an American singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, producer, and playwright. Peppy is probably best known as an original member of the garage psych rock band Blues Magoos with the 1966 hit We Ain't Got Nothin Yet. From the period 1964 to 1971, the band issued 4 albums and a whole slew of singles. Afterwards, Mr. Castro appeared in the Broadway production of Hair and joined the Alessi Brothers. See my interview from May of 2023 in the band Barnaby Bye in the early 1970s. Then came stints in the bands Wiggy Bits, King of Hearts, and Balance during the mid-70s to early 80s. Peppy wrote jingles for a while, and his songs have been covered by many artists. The new millennium brought reunion shows, reformations, and a couple of new albums for the Blues Magoos. In 2013, Peppy would release his first solo album, Just Beginning, and my guest was hired on as associate producer of the Off-Broadway production of the Gong Show Live, which I imagine was a lot of fun to do. Yeah. Well, welcome, Peppy.
Hey, Greg, my pleasure. Your audience doesn't know this, but we did a psychedelic dance to get to this point. Much to the fact that the drugs haven't completely destroyed me, being a psychedelic pioneer. So I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay. Well, take us back to the beginning. Well, where were you born?
Well, I was born in Manhattan, of all things, at the Fifth Avenue Flower Memorial Hospital on Upper Fifth Avenue in New York City, Manhattan. And I was raised on 106th Street and Broadway back then. And unfortunately, my father, whose name was Emilio Castro, he passed away when I was 5 months old. And so I missed out on my culture. I was born Emilio Castro, and my mom remarried when I was 4, and to a gentleman by the name of Herbert Thielhelm, and he adopted me in 1954, and he was of German descent, and Emilio was a more Latino name. So they dropped Emilio to Emil and Emil, and then my last name became Thielhelm. So I kind of grew up as an Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yes.
And then they moved us up to the Bronx, and I was not too happy as a child, even though I received a lot of love from my mom. By the time I was 7 years old, Thielhelm, God rest his soul, he had had 3 heart attacks and a stroke. And my mother nursed him for 26 years. So by the time I was 14 years old, I had it with the Bronx, and I was like, I'm out of here. And I left home at 14, which then had me dodging police and truant officers, because you obviously can't be a 14-year-old running around the likes of Manhattan till all hours of the night playing music and not have to eventually get caught or something. And so they wanted to put me away, but I was extremely blessed, and I've been in the process for 6 years. I know this sounds silly, but I am penning an autobiography called The Prince of McDougal Street, in parentheses, which will be called The Prince of McDougal Street, a Psychedelic Pioneer. And one of the stories that I have already logged in the book is, if you don't mind me telling this.
No.
I'm 14 years old. I'm playing at a club in Greenwich Village called the Night Owl Cafe, which is now the band of the first incarnation of the Blues Magoos. We were the Trenchcoats before that. But we migrated down to the village. All the other guys in the band had already graduated high school, so they had no issues like I did. But we my mother called me up crying one day telling me the detectives were here. They're going to put you away if you don't go back to school. And I was like, oh, Mom, don't worry. I'm fine. Well, one night I'm on stage in the Night Out Cafe and I see these big dudes walk in suits. And I was like, okay, these are not your hippies from Greenwich Village. And in the middle of the song, I took my guitar off. I jumped off the stage. I went to the right and I ran out the back door of the club. I proceeded to go run up to the roof. I got up to the roof. I started scaling 3 or 4 roofs of these adjacent buildings. Whoa. I came down 3 or 4 buildings later, my heart pumping because I knew they were detectives. And I ran back to the hotel where I was living, which was the Hotel Albert, which is an infamous rock and roll hotel from the 60s. And I was like, you know, yeah. And so now I'm like, have the fear of God put into me. And every night I'm playing, I'm kind of like paranoid, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, looking around.
Yeah. Fast forward 2 months later, a guy comes into the club and I saw he wasn't a hippie either, but he also didn't look like a detective. And so I got off stage and the guy said, hey, hi, can I talk to you for a minute? And he seemed very non-threatening. So I said, yeah, okay, what's up? He goes, listen, he goes, I'm your truant officer. And he said, and I can see you're doing something with your life, but you got to work with me or you're going to get put away. And I was like, oh, okay. Long story short, this guy offered me a deal which I couldn't refuse, even though I didn't believe him, but I had no choice. He brought me back to the school where I was supposed to be going. And he said, let me ask you something. He said, because my mom was the only responsible parent. My stepfather was a vegetable, you know? And so he said, let me ask you something. He goes, if I could get you signed out of the school system with your parents' consent, do you think your mother would do that? And I went, yeah, I think she would. He said, great. Okay, then we can do this. He goes, when are you going to be 16? And my face dropped because I'm 14 years old.
Yeah.
and I said, I'm going to be 15 in 2 months. And then all of a sudden his face drops and he looks at me like, oh, fuck. You know, he goes, and I swear to God, this man saved my life. He came out and he goes, okay, listen to me. He goes, I tell you what, he goes, I'll come down here on a Monday morning. I'll pick you up. You come back with me. We'll drive back up to the Bronx to the school. He goes, and I will forge your birth certificate and make it so that when you turn 15 years old, you will legally be signed out of the school system. I was like, okay, I got to go with this. You know, I didn't know whether he was going to pick me up and take me to the reformatory or anything. The guy was a gem. Mind you, I had already had issues with the school because I was in the first wave of kids in the United States that were growing their hair long and being in bands. Right. I was not allowed to go to that school unless I sat in the principal's office every single day till I cut my hair and I stopped wearing boots. Okay. After 2 weeks of sitting like that for the principal, who was a guy named Walter J. Degnan, who was this Razorback ex-Marine dean of this school of 3,000 boys called Dewood Clinton in the Bronx, which a lot of famous people came out of. But it was a rough school. You know, there were no girls. It was like, this was all boys, you know. And if a few of them were left back, you know, then you were dealing with like really hardened guys that could kill you in a blink, you know. And so I sat for 2 weeks in front of outside his office every 2 weeks, day in, day out. And finally I went, fuck this. And no, I'm not going to school. And that's when I stopped going and everything. So when he brought me back, he's walking down the hall and all of a sudden I hear, hey, stop, stop. And it's this Walter J. Degnan coming out into the hall, screaming at me and screaming at, what's this kid doing in my school? And screaming. And the guy said, relax. It's okay. We're signing him out. And he goes, okay. And that's it. I was like, holy shit. So 2 months before my 15th birthday, I legally got signed out of the school system. And that man saved my life without a doubt, or certainly the trajectory of where life was going to go. Yeah.
Where you were headed.
So,
Yeah.
so that was basically my 10-year stint in the Bronx. And, and at 14, I never looked back.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about some of the artists and musicians that you were into around that time.
Woo! That was the most wonderful, I didn't know then.
Yeah.
But now I have the 2020 of hindsight, and I've lived all these decades and everything. And I look back and I realized that I witnessed the transition in the Greenwich Village from folk to electric.
Yes.
So, I'm playing along with the Love and Spoonful are just getting ready to break. Richie Havens is getting ready to break. This is even before Jimi Hendrix, who was Jimmy James in the Blue Flame, playing at the Cafe Wah. He hadn't even met Chas Chandler yet from the Animals, who brought him back and then reincarnated him as the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jimmy would come in and jam with us on Sunday afternoons, in the Night Owl. And so it was an incredible time. Yet at the same time, you had to feel sorry for the coffee house guys, the Phil Oakes, Dave Van Ronk,
Speaking of, did you happen to see my interview with Carolyn Hester?
With who?
Carolyn Hester. Do you remember Carolyn Hester?
Where do I know that?
She played up there in Greenwich in the coffee houses, folky. She's from Texas. She still lives here. 87 years old. I did an interview with her. And still sharp as a tack. Still sharp.
Wow.
Yeah, she was playing around that time. This is pre Dylan, before Dylan ever recorded anything. He was going around begging everybody. Can I play on your album? Can I play with you? Hear what I have to play. And she let him play on one of her albums, the harmonica, and that was before he ever recorded anything. Yeah.
I probably came in when I came in, guys like Tim Hardin, Freddie Neal, Dave Van Ronk, they were all doing the coffee houses. As a matter of fact, I met Richie Havens when I was 14.
Yeah.
And I was playing in a little club called the Village Music Hall. And this is before the Magoos had worked their way up through the clubs to get into the Night Owl Cafe.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. And the funny, because the reason I called Just Beginning, that little CD I did, I wrote that song because of Richie Havens. And what happened was I was 14. We rehearsed on a Saturday afternoon in this club. I didn't know anything. I was right out of the Bronx. I had 3 girls dancing in front of me. They all had gold teeth, motorcycle jackets on, and my guys are going, psst, psst, they're dykes. And I'm going, what's a dyke? I didn't have a clue about anything. I'm like, look at the Bronx, and so
it's not the kind of dyke you put your finger in.
It's not off of the Hudson River, And these girls, when we would play on a Saturday night, they'd come in front of me and go, shake your buns, honey, shake your buns. And they'd dance in front of me. And I was like mesmerized by them, because there was a black chick, a white girl, and, they were freaks, but they were women, but they were really tough. And I had no idea, but they loved me. They're seeing this little kid, playing. So there was like, they thought I was cute, So I befriended them. So one day we're rehearsing, and it's a Saturday afternoon, and everybody left the place after they rehearsed. All the guys went out to go to bars or somewhere, things like that. And I'm sitting there by myself, because we were starving. We'd go in kitchens and make 8 salad sandwiches in these places, because we'd play for free just to play, Yeah. And all of a sudden, this big tall dude walks in, and it was Richie Havens. And Richie came up to me, and I was sitting on the stage, and literally nobody was in the club. This is how crazy it was. And he came up to me and goes, "Hey kid, you in a band?" And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to hear a song?" I said, "Sure." He sits down on the side of the stage, opens up his acoustic, takes out all these pages and pages of lyrics, and proceeds to sing me. His hands were huge.
Yeah.
And he could wrap his thumb around the neck of the guitar and everything. And he didn't know from open tuning. From regular tuning. He couldn't play the guitar with a regular tuning. It was always tuned to open tunings. And he'd figured out the most beautiful chordings and stuff. And he sang this song called Follow that was on his first record, Mixed Bag. And my mouth dropped. And I was just like, I was mesmerized him. And we stayed friends all these years till he passed. And what happened was, about a year before he passed, he called me up on the phone.
Yeah.
I was like, "Richie, hey man, how are you?" Because over the years, I'd done Amtrak commercials with Richie, "All aboard Amtrak." That was all Richie Havens,
Yeah.
The first TV show I ever did was the Blues Magoos. Richie Havens was on. So we kind of came out of the village at the same time, We all migrated up to Woodstock. All this kind of thing. So, and I was in love with Richie. He was such a messenger and such a pure, wonderful soul, right? So he calls me up and he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "Are you ready for this?" I go, "What?" He goes, "I'm going to the Cannes Film Festival." I said, "Wow, Richie." He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do a command performance there." I said, "Wow, Richie, that's fabulous. That's great." He goes, "They're giving an award to Sean Penn." And they asked Sean Penn who his favorite recording artist was. And he said, Richie Havens. So as a surprise, they hired Richie to go to the Cannes Film Festival as a surprise to do a command performance for Sean Penn's induction or something into this festival and stuff like that. And so I said, "Richie, that's amazing." I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Richie," I said, "You know what? We're getting away with murder to be doing what we're doing at our age." And in his best hippie voice, he went, "Hey man, I'm just getting started. I'm just beginning." And I heard that and I went, "Richie, son of a bitch." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm gonna go downstairs right after this phone call." And I said, "And I'm gonna go downstairs and I'm gonna write a song called Just Beginning."
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's where it came from.
Yeah, that's where it came from. And that's why I titled that. And I got the CD to him before he died.
Oh, well, that's great. That's
Because
great.
he was in bad shape.
Yeah. I just remember that iconic performance at Woodstock, Freedom,
Yeah.
and that will go down in history.
Oh yeah, that's historic. Yeah.
Performance. Well, go back to Blues Magoos. How did you guys meet and start playing together?
Well, I was teaching myself how to play guitar because I had got roped into a church play when I was 13 years old. And I was like, And they wanted me to mime a song from the Kingston Trio called Greenback a Dollar. And it was me, my brother, and this other guy named Rick Thumer. And Rick knew how to play the song on guitar, but we didn't know how to play. So they just gave us guitars and we were supposed to air guitar. And it was part of this little musical, this little church play that they were doing. And so I felt like a fool not being able to really play guitar. It's like, stay up here and make believe. It's like, it like didn't sit well with me because ever since I was 4 years old, I loved to sing. And so one day after school, I called this kid Rick up, and I said, "Hey, would you teach me how to play guitar a little bit?" And I said, "Sure." So I went over to his house, and the guy showed me an E minor chord. And the minute I went, "Gring," and I heard that, that was like my aha moment. That was like the sky opened up. I saw this big zipper, and I went, if I go through this hole in the sky, I can be two people. I can be the guy who sings and the guy who accompanies the singer. It was like, it was the only, and from that moment on, nothing mattered. I begged my mother to buy me a cheapo guitar in a pawn shop. I tortured her till she bought me a guitar. And after that, nothing mattered, not school, not anything. And of course, I had to deal with all my friends, you suck, you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't rehearse in my house because my stepdad was this invalid who walked around, stroke had paralyzed him, and my mother nursed him, and there was no place to really do that. So I would take my guitar and walk off and go off to a park and sit by a tree and take a chord book and teach myself how to play. So one day there was a feast, an Italian feast. There are two Italian neighborhoods in the Bronx. One is called Villa Avenue, and the other is Arthur Avenue, which is the most famous one, where all those wise guys, Joe Pesci and De Niro and all those guys crawled out of, and stuff. But the Villa Avenue had a feast, and my friends and neighbors said, "Hey, we're going to Villa Avenue feast, man. You want to come?" It was a big Italian feast. And I said, "Yeah, okay, let's go. So we went up on a Saturday night, and on this like 8-foot riser, which you had to climb a big ladder to get up, I look up and I see this guy in a Chesterfield coat and a white turtleneck playing an organ. And I see this other crazy little guy jumping around who looked like a Bill Wyman.
Yeah.
And they were the trench coats, and that was Ronnie Gilbert, who recently passed away. He's our first Magoo to pass, and he was our bass player, and Ralph Scaller, who was actually the lead singer on We Ain't Got Nothin Yet, even though we shared vocals on the albums and stuff like that. And I saw those guys, and they were the first incarnation of anything, because I had seen the Pretty Things on the Ed Sullivan Show in like probably 1965 or 64, before the Beatles even came out and stuff. And so I was kind of aware of all this stuff. And, and these guys were the first wave. They were totally in shock of the British invasion. And so I immediately started talking to them, and I was like, hey. And they were like, "Oh, you in a band?" No, you play? Yeah, well, I just started playing guitar. Well, we're looking for a rhythm guitar player. And I had already met this guy named Dennis Lepore, who had a band called the Ascots. And he was looking for a rhythm guitar player. And I told him I knew how to play. And he said, "Well, I'll teach you." I said, "But I really don't know much." And he goes, "Well, if you join my band, I'll show you what to play." And so, so he showed me bar chords and stuff. And we partnered up with Ronnie and Ralph and our original drummer, who was their drummer, John Finnegan. And that was the first incarnation of the Magoos. However, John Finnegan and Dennis Lepore did not end up being the actual Blues Magoos recording group.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, they had got replaced before we got a record deal by we had met Mike Esposito. Ronnie and Ralph had met Mike Esposito, who was playing in a club down the block, which was not a coffee house, but an actual bar club. And he was in a band, Mike Scott and the Night Riders or something like that. And he was an unbelievable bass player. And so we asked him, did he want to sit in with us one night? And he said, yeah. And we asked him if he played guitar. He said, yeah. So he came to the Night Owl one night and sat in with us when Dennis wasn't there. And he played our whole set without any rehearsal and was better than our guitar player.
Is that right?
On guitar. And we went, oh my God, this guy's great. So then we asked him to join the band. And then we said, no, well, now we need a drummer too. We need a guy who's good like you. And then he came up with Jeff Daking, and they were both from Delaware. So Jeff came to New York. He had graduated American U and stuff like that. And Jeff was like a geek. He'd already had a pilot's license and everything at 18 years old. He was pretty savvy. And Mike Esposito was the son of Brigadier General Vincent Esposito, who had written both the encyclopedias of World War I and II for the United States Army. And
Ooh.
Mike grew up having dinners every other week with President Eisenhower and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
all his brothers were the youngest colonels and captains in Vietnam. And Mike was like the total black sheep of the family. He was a consummate musician, artist, painter. He wanted none of it and stuff like that. So that became the actual original Blues Magoos. And once we started playing out, then we started generating some serious attention.
Right. Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier about being signed to a label that was Mercury Records.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting doing these interviews, the connections that I find. You know, I just spoke with Frank Sesich, who's Blue Ash. Do you remember Blue Ash?
Yes, yes.
During the 70s Ohio band. They also signed with Mercury. So it's just, interesting, that I just talked to this guy and the same record label there.
Well, back then, Mercury had signed Spanky and Our Gang.
Yeah,
I think was on there. Was the Mamas and Papas on there?
I'm not sure if they were or not.
I know the Smothers Brothers was on Mercury. And that was the link to us getting the Smothers Brothers show. I think there was a link there because they were label mates.
Yeah.
I got a funny story for you. The interesting trivia, which you probably may have not ever heard, but since you're up on Carol Hester and all that stuff, were you up on Tom and Jerry?
Tom and Jerry, yes. Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Well, their manager was a guy named Marvin Laganoff.
Okay.
And Marvin Laganoff was my first manager.
Ah, okay.
And so this is before the Magoos had any sense of themselves and were writing songs and stuff like that. So the first little releases that came out on the Magoos was on Verve Folkways. And we were packaged, Marvin Laganoff got this guy, Rick Shorter, and they had the songs. And here, you guys sing these songs and we're going to put a record out on you and stuff like that. And I was really a baby. But Tom and Jerry were managed by Marvin Laganoff. And it was a guy named Tom Wilson from CBS. Did you ever hear that name?
That sounds familiar. That name does.
Okay, he was a huge, tall black guy, as tall as Richie Havens, if not a bigger. And it was Tom Wilson who took Tom and Jerry's acoustic version of Sounds of Silence.
Yeah.
And he overdubbed an entire orchestra on it over their original acoustic track as Tom and Jerry, and overdubbed the orchestrations and everything on that. And then they changed their names to Simon and Garfunkel, and that's what became the record of Sounds in Silence.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, the whole orchestra was completely overdubbed over their acoustic version. Yeah, Tom and Jerry's acoustic version. So
I like to hear stories.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, you're so up on stuff. That's definite. That's definite trivia time.
Paul. I don't know if he permanently lives here in Texas, outside of Austin, but they do have a house down there. He and Edie Brickell.
Yeah,
they do have a house, and I was like, wow, I'll have to pop down and see him.
And where's their house?
It's outside of Austin.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well.
Yeah. So
Austin's a mecca.
Oh yeah, it is. It has been for some time. Well, you of course the band is most remembered for "We Ain't Got Nothin Yet." Did you feel after you had recorded it that was going to be a pretty big hit? Did you have a good feeling?
No.
Okay.
I don't think. I think I've always been a realist to where I never really wanted to get my hopes up and psych myself so much, yes, did I think it was good? Yeah. Did I think the band was good? Yeah. I thought, but I was so busy enjoying the moment
Yeah.
And being that age and free and living my own life and living this life as as music and creating music and stuff. I don't think I projected that, you know. Also, Tobacco Road was very strong for us. And
Yeah.
Tobacco Road is what gave us all the attention at radio. So that when We Ain't Got Nothing Yet came out, that's why it got embraced so much. But once I heard it on the radio, I think the first time I ever heard it on the radio maybe was we were in Cleveland or Detroit or something like that. And that was the greatest rush on earth. Hearing it coming out of the airwaves in a car on the radio. And at that point I went, wow.
That's got
okay.
That's got to be a surreal. That's got to be a surreal experience, right?
To a 17-year-old, it was just like beyond, you know. And that's when I was like, wow, oh my God, yeah, that was one of the best aha moments in life. Yeah. Hearing that, because from 14 to the 17, there's this whole trek of dodging this and that, playing, going here, taking trips where nobody knows you're trying to play music and stuff, and then all of a sudden this stuff comes out on the radio, and then town to town, and you start to see the swell. Unfortunately for the Magoos, I don't know if you know this one either. Unfortunately for the Magoos, the follow-up single was called Pipe Dream.
Yeah.
And it got banned.
Right. Yeah.
That was the death knell for the Magoos. That's what gave us the one-hit wonder status, was that Pipe Dream came out. It was about 40 already. It was climbing the charts. It was already top 40. And the ABC network, because mind you, at this point, FM isn't, it's a blink, it's just starting. And FM meant great, FM was nothing but a bunch of hippies who realized they could play songs for like 10 minutes and smoke dope in the control room and not have to do a lot of commercials and listen to all the Meg, and then to come on every once in a while and say, hey man, that was this and this was that was the Buffalo Springfield, and then and next, and then boom, and then go back to another 12-20 minutes smoking weed, so and then it became commercialized, obviously. But the ABC network called us up and said, because the hippie movement and psychedelia and the flower power and drugs was becoming so big that they were becoming so afraid of it, and they said, we can't play this, it's too psychedelic, it's too controversial, it's too psychedelic. And we were like, but it's an anti-drug song. We're not telling people to take drugs, we're telling them, you're having a pipe dream, come back to reality, don't get hung up on this stuff, but it's like, sorry. And so
and the record label, they got hung up on the title, the name,
right. And then they tried to flip the single, and then both went to top 40, and then radio at that point is like McDonald's, it's like throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. And so by that time they were just like, oh yeah, Magoos, what was their last record? Oh yeah, Pipe Dream, only went to 40. Yep, one-hit wonders, next.
Right.
And then it was like it was a slow crash and burn,
Well, I want to mention though, but from that same album, Psychedelic Lollipop, I like Queen of My Nights, which was written by a folk singer, David Blue. I like his stuff. Yeah.
And to me, when I was there, because mind you, I'm walking around the village and I'm seeing Dylan every single day walking the streets with his guitar, David Blue is doing the same thing. But when I looked at the both of them, I was like going, wow, David Blue, he's a good looking man. He's, like, this guy's going to be the guy to break, And lo and behold, Richie came out, Spoonful came out, Dylan came out, and David Blue never broke. And but Queen of My Nights was like a classic,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It was like the McCoys, 3 chords, just like, but at the day, it was perfect. And I remember seeing him singing it in the night owl or the coffee houses. And Ralph was like, I love that song. We should cut that song. I love that song, you know. So yeah, so we did that. And yeah,
Well,
the power of songwriting.
yeah. Well, any memorable live shows around this time?
Ooh, oh my God, so many of them. Well, there's there's, let's go pro and con, you know.
Yeah.
There's some amazing things, and there's some like things that you want to put in your book,
Yeah. Right.
and the stuff. So
Yeah.
there was shocking, and there was, there's before you have a hit record, and then when you have a hit record. So, for instance, the Magoos broke in Detroit. We broke out of the Midwest, but we would trek from Greenwich Village in an airport stretch limo. And each guy had their row of seat, and we'd sleep in the seats, and we'd put all our gear on top of the stretch. And we drove to Detroit, and we would start playing this place called the Chessmate. Well, we went there once, and, maybe few people, but they wanted us back. And the next time we came back, there were hundreds. And the next time we came back, there were lines around the corner, And this is before We Ain't Got Nothing Yet hit, but we were starting to pack clubs outside of our area. So that was always a very memorable experience because, we had to sleep in terrible little hotels that were, and I remember smoking dope, and I'd have to block the door at night, and we'd sit and get stoned and watch test patterns on the TV and go like, whoa, man.
Yeah.
Because you had three channels on the TV, and the TV would go off at 2 a.m. and we'd still be up after the gig going like, man, look how trippy. Whoa, look at the dots,
Yeah.
I was just like beyond crazy. But you didn't want to get caught back in those days with the weed. And I remember we took a trip to Biloxi, Mississippi. And this is before we had a hit record. And we were playing clubs in Florida and there. And it must have been 1966, probably, And we had rented a motorhome, and we drove down in a little motorhome. And I remember we stopped for gas in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I remember stopping, and we wanted to go in, and we saw 2 doors. And one said coloreds, and one said whites.
Right.
And we're hippies from New York with long hair, and we were like, where do we go?
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there, and it's the first time in my life I was actually ever confronted with coloreds, whites. It's like, who are we,
Right.
And half of us went in the whites and half of us went in the colors, which was the kitchen. And I remember going into the kitchen, and I remember sitting in, and you could hear a pin drop because even the blacks are like,
they're staring at you.
This?
Yeah.
What is this? These little white boys coming into our kitchen with the long hair? What the hell? And the other people on the other side going, who the fuck are these fairies?
You didn't fit in either place, did you? No.
And so I got a few of those type stories.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of the coin, there's playing Cleveland now after the Blues Magoos are top 10. And, sometimes we found ourselves being headliners in markets where we were strong. And so at this point, actually, Jefferson Airplane opened for us. They were just really starting to break in Cleveland. big hall, big things, kids, tail end of Beatlemania. And I remember being on stage, and I remember these kids storming the stage. They're trying to get on the stage and grab us, touch us with our clothes. It was like a little pandemonium. And in the back of these kids, I see this guy who had a Snoopy Red Baron leather cap on with goggles.
Yeah.
And he's climbing to get over people, and I'm going,
Uh-huh.
wow, these kids are storming stage. Oh, look at that freak. Holy shit. This guy's really nuts, So
I have to say, that was my first album. Snoopy versus the Red Baron. Snoopy versus the Red Baron. The Royal Guardsman.
The Royal Guardsman. So, and that's it. And they're just starting to come out. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking Snoopy Red Baron, all this kind of stuff. But I see him because he stands out all over all the other kids, because the other kids are just fine. But this guy's got goggles on and a helmet. And what's his trip, So the gig ends. They keep the kids off of the stage, the whole thing. And we're backstage. All of a sudden, the police come back. And they're going, where's Peppy? And I'm going, they come up to me and they go, are you Peppy? And I said, yeah. I said, well, that guy who had the Snoopy red hat on and the goggles? And he said, yeah, well, we took him away. He had a knife on him this big, and he said his name was Peppy, and you stole his name, and he was going to stab you.
Oh, man. Okay.
And I was like,
you know what?
Oh,
you know what?
they,
you know why he was playing the Snoopy versus the Red Baron backwards. He was playing it backwards. It told him to do that.
I was like, oh, they don't all really love you, do they? Right. And that was my first inclination of like, And then there was like the tour with the Who and the Hermits, which we did. We went out, and that's the tour that broke the Who in the United States.
Okay.
We went out for the whole summer of 1967. I mean, so my Keith Moon stories are going in the book because, I was the last person. I was the last person to finally go out and hang out with him because I wanted to live. It was that crazy. Because every time I went out with him, I was putting my life at risk because the guy was so batshit crazy. But I was in awe of them, and I can remember going to after parties. With I was in one place with Townsend, and we went to this party after the gig, and these are all civic auditoriums where half the house's parents there with their kids to see Peter at noon, and the rest are all these fucking whacked out hippies to see the Magoos in their electric suits and the Who destroy their shit. It was surreal, And so I remember one night we were in an after party. We went to this after party thing. And there's this guy walking around in a lab jacket and a little coffee, tea, or me little tray and stuff. And he comes up and he goes, would you like some? And he's in like a pharmaceutical lab, and it's nothing but drugs.
Oh, okay.
Every kind of drug imaginable. And we're like, oh, what do you have there? And we're going, well, what's that one? And he'd go, oh, I can't tell you that. That would ruin the surprise. So we could have what was ever in the tray.
But you didn't know what it was.
But he wasn't going to tell us what it was. Meanwhile, me and Pete were like, no, thanks. There's no way. And I think it must have been 3 days later that the bass player, I think for Iron Maiden or one of these bands, snorted cocaine that was laced with Drano or something like that and dropped dead and stuff. So, you heard all these stories. But then there were like
Yeah.
amazing gigs, like I mean, doing the craft musical with Jack Benny, Henny Youngman, Maury Amsterdam, and Lee Barachi
Yeah. Yeah.
was like, I'm talking to Jack Benny, and I'm
Right.
like, I remember, falling asleep on Saturday nights on my mother's chest
Yeah.
because she loved Jack Benny so much, and we'd watch
Yeah.
Jack Benny all the time. And here I am, I'm 18 or 17 years old,
Yeah.
you know,
And you think
you know,
at that time, you're never going to meet this person, and then you end up playing on the same stage. Yeah.
and then you're there.
And then
And
you're
I was a huge Maury Amsterdam Henny
yeah.
Youngman fan. I was always aware of who they were. And I'm getting made up with makeup. And they're standing there with their violins, and these guys are never off. They're going, "Hey, what do you get when you cross two beams and a beam and a boom, boom, boom?" And everybody in the room is laughing. And then Maury Amsterdam comes back and says, "Well, if you take two shakes of the tail and you stick your ass up your head, I mean, like
Yeah, they're
it,
always on.
it was
Always.
just, yeah, it was
Yeah.
total surrealness. And to a
Yeah.
young kid
Yeah.
to go from the
Well,
Bronx
right
and
to that.
end up doing this, so
Well,
there's so many.
A more sedate venue. You mentioned earlier, Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Sad that Tommy passed away a day after Christmas last year.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. They were great guys. They were Maggie. I got a little Jack Russell out here getting ready.
Okay, okay.
But they were great.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
bit that we did on there was like amazing. It was great. It was they really had it down. They had Tommy in a wig.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Did you ever see that
I
one?
didn't see that. No, I didn't see
Oh,
that.
I'll send it to you. It's
Okay,
classic.
okay.
It's classic because they had scripted this whole bit where we're gonna come on and they spoke about Pipe Dream being released and all this stuff. And they do this whole bit to where the guys are gonna play this band and they close up to each one of us. And they said,
Yeah.
"Here's Ralph Magoo," and we turned the camera. And after they went through all of us, then they went, "Oh, wait a minute, Tommy Magoo?" And then all of a sudden, it's Tommy Smothers in this like god awful wig going. "Ah." You can hear the audience crack up. He goes, "Tommy, what are you doing? What are you doing?" "Well, I like the guy so much, I thought I'd sit in with him." And he goes, "Like, did you ever think to
Yeah.
ask them?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "What are you talking about? To know me is to love me. These guys love me, right, fellas? Well, how about it, fellas?" And then they said, "Well, like when we say, 'Do you want Tommy to play with us?' you guys all put your instruments down and walk off and say, like, 'No way, no way.'" So then we walk away. So then the camera pans back to Tommy and he goes, "All right, I can take a hint. I'll take off my hair." And he takes off his fucking hair.
Yes.
That's like so
Did you?
funny.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. Like even me, having witnessed
Yeah.
it and been there, if I see that
Yeah.
thing, there's
Yeah.
no way I don't laugh.
No. Did you ever think of pairing up with Jim Backus, Mr. Magoo?
No, that was strange. Yeah, and but we held our own. We
Yeah.
ended up being
Yeah.
a whole other different
Right.
entity, and the great thing is, the reason why I still keep doing things occasionally. Like I put out a song called "Somewhere Is Nowhere Is Somewhere"
Yeah.
within the last 2 years because I wanted to do one last thing with the Magoos,
Yeah.
just to go out on a high and to capsule. So I put this little tune out, and it's really fun. It's really great, and I put a bunch of footage of us and stuff together because over the years, you get people come out of the woodwork and go, like on Facebook and stuff like this, and they'll be like, "Man, Magoos, we love the Magoos. Magoos was the first concert I ever saw with my wife. We saw you guys, and we saw the Blues Magoos, and we got married because we saw you guys." So when you
Yeah.
hear stories like that, and for whatever fan base and people are out there still, I still keep it up for that because I realize it was a special point in their lives to when they had all those bands they loved.
Yeah. Yes.
whether it be the Magoos or the Buckinghams or the McCoys or any of these great acts that came out, and they were all different.
Yes.
Nobody ever sounded like they were on a bandwagon. It was
Right.
like the creativity level was so intensely cool, Every band that came out of England was a complete unique experience. And the same thing with America. At the Buffalo Springfield, the Moby Grape were amazing.
Right.
They were, I saw them when they were together. We played at the Avalon on the Fillmore out in San Francisco. And we it was the Magoos, Moby Grape, Buffalo Springfield. I saw Moby Grape on stage, and they told me that they'd only been together for 2 weeks. And I was like,
yes,
maybe I should just give it up. And then Skip Spence became my friend, and he would come and stay with me at the Hotel Albert in New York. And obviously he was another freaking Keith Moon. He was just
he was batshit. Yeah, he
talented and so batshit crazy. Holy mother.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a great
Quicksilver Messenger.
Quicksilver,
yeah.
I mean, the airplane, everything was so creativity was the Doors, the Seeds. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
What's that? Electric Prunes.
Right.
One of the best names ever.
Right.
So I mean, man, what a time to be alive.
Yes.
It's really killer.
I'm envious of you guys. I wish I'd been born, 10, 20 years earlier. Well, how did you talk about after? Go ahead.
You keep us alive. It's
beautiful. Well, you mentioned about the fans that have followed you how about younger fans? Maybe sons and daughters of the fans.
Brazil, Italy.
It's
this is why I decided to write a book, because every 10 years, another generation comes along. And when they trip on and hit on GarageBand, I mean, listen, the Ramones were huge Magoo fans.
Yes, right.
Joey Ramone, Dee Dee Ramone came from Peppy Magoo, Ralph Magoo, Ronnie Magoo. That's where that whole thing sunk in with them, and stuff like that, because they were just coming up, and We Ain't Got Nothing Yet was in the treasure chest. They love the Magoos. So when you see the influence and how it goes down the line and stuff, it's pretty. So every 10 years I noticed much. When I was in my 40s, I remember my wife passed away. She was this young, beautiful Dutch-Hungarian girl, and American, but of that descent. And she was younger than me. And we used to go out, and she passed away like 17 years ago from ovarian cancer. And we used to go out, when we go to parties, when people would come up, and, you're talking 30 years ago, something like that. People would say, "Oh, hi, man. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, what do you do? Oh, well, I was in this band, blah, 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 blah." And my wife would go, "Honey, nobody knows who the Blues Magoos are. You can stop saying that." I'm like, oh, but every 10 years, a crop would come up and go, you were in the 60s, you were the Magoos. Oh my God. Will you talk to me? Will you tell me what that was like?
Yeah.
And so I kept going on, and over the years, people would suggest to me, "Man, you should write a book." And I've been like, come on, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed, but I'm a guy who's flying under the radar. I'm not John Bon Jovi. I'm not, this, so I couldn't see the validity in it, Then another 10 years would go by. Then another 10 years go by. Then I hit 70, and I start saying, "Dude, you're a legend," And I'm going, and then I meet this friend of mine who's now a dear friend, this guy named Henrik Olsen. When Balance, we did some shows in Europe, in Greece and Spain and stuff like that. and Sweden, and oh no, that Magoo, but Balance did Sweden, and this guy came out of the woodwork and was like, man, yeah, you guys are Balance. What a fucking band! Holy shit, Balance was an amazing band,
Yeah.
and so he was like, would you? You should write a book. Would you write a book? And I was like, I said, every decade somebody asks me I should do this. And I said, but I tell you what, if I can see myself through your eyes as not being an American, but a global guy from Europe or something like that, you know what? That would make it fun for me. And I'll do that.
Right.
So this guy's been so patient with me because I've been working on this thing for 6 years, and COVID hit, and I was like, ugh, all my friends are dying. I can't exactly write about myself, And so it's been very hard because I'm a wired out Gemini, an adult ADD, and this in my retirement, shit keeps coming at me, Like I am one of two composers now in a new musical coming out called Warhol, right?
Yeah, about Andy.
Yeah, right. But the director is Sir Trevor Nunn. And Sir Trevor Nunn directed Les Mis. He directed Cats, one of the longest running, and he's also my lyricist. So I got commissioned by my former manager, Steve Lieber. He paid me and everything. Peppy, I want you to work on this. Are you kidding me? Like, wow, I'd love that. This is fabulous. Show. And then I brought Doug Katsarison, who's been a bandmate of mine forever and ever and ever, who was in Balance with me and was a musical director for me for years and a lot of stuff. And Dougie and I came in and we hit it out of the park. So it's going to be a major event. They're already 2.5 million in on this thing, so I know they're going to want to get their money back, and that's probably going to open up in the UK next summer.
Okay.
2025. But to have Sir Trevor Nunn as my lyricist, and then I realized Sir Trevor Nunn wrote Memories.
Right.
He was the lyricist for that.
Yeah.
So all these things come out of the woodwork. And so I decided to do it with Henrik. And Henrik's been to the States twice. He stayed with me twice. He took me to every single place I ever grew up in, where I grew up, where I went to church, the old night out, everything. And he documented everything and filmed everything. And it's some of the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life. Because stuff like you wouldn't expect, like the church that I grew up in is now a Korean church in the Bronx. And we snuck in one day after a church service. And when I was a kid, there was a little gymnasium. There was like a basketball court. And that's where I was to do the first show, that little church play. But they also had a single lane bowling alley in there that the pastor had built in there as well. And I'm telling Orlando about all this stuff. I'm going, this is the reason why I play guitar. And Peppy, we have to go there. And I go, well, the church services is over, but we drive up to the Bronx, from Manhattan and stuff. And I go, but here's the rectory. Maybe it's open. And so I open the door and we go, it's open. Meanwhile, Henrik is filming me. So I'm going downstairs, the gym, where they have a stage and they have a bowling alley. And I hadn't been there in, since the 60s, And so I'm sneaking downstairs. And so we get down there and we're going and we're like, and he's following me, filming and everything. And so I peek my head in, and it's nothing but a bunch of Koreans having lunch. And so all of a sudden, there's a freak go in. I go, oh, hi. And they go, oh, hi. And half of them can't even speak English.
Right.
and Orlando, and Henrik is filming this whole thing. And so I immediately start talking in like broken English. Oh, hi, my name is Peppy, and I used to come here to this church. Oh, yeah. And they're all doing this, and all of a sudden this guy comes up, and his name was Pastor Puck.
Okay,
And Pastor Puck starts going, oh, I'm Pastor Puck. And so when I mention things like the bowling alley, they're hysterical. Like it's still there.
You know what that reminds me of? Do you remember the movie Christmas Story?
Yeah.
Where the dogs eat all the turkey, so they have to go out for Chinese.
Yes.
And it used to be a bowling place because the W's not lit up anymore. So they turned it into Chinese bowling. Bowling. So it's a Chinese restaurant. That's what I thought of.
So so he was like, then he wanted to show me the church, the chapel, and we went in and I played a little piano in the chapel. Henrik is like, can't believe this, that we're getting all this stuff. So we have tons of footage like that to go along with the whole story of the book. I just can't finish the damn thing because so many things keep coming at me,
Yeah. Well,
but I've got about...
I want to rewind a bit, go back to 73 with Barnaby Bye. To talk a little bit about that. Did you see my interview? Did you see my interview with the Alessi Brothers? Did you see my interview with the Alessi Brothers?
No.
Yeah. Did
you send it to me?
I will send it to you, but it's on my YouTube channel, and it was from May of last year. Yeah. I didn't know what I was getting into with those guys. They could have had a side career in stand-up comedy. I'm serious. Those guys are a riot. And some of their stories, I'll just tell you one, it just cracked me up. We're talking about being twins. And when they were young, their mother would dress them up, in these with the little ties, and they are identical. And then they got their asses kicked, when they went to school, And so they started hiding their clothes in like the bushes or somewhere close to the house. So she would dress them up, and then they would change and put on cooler clothes so they wouldn't get beat up.
Yeah. I left. First of all, I played with them yesterday.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Really?
We did Barnaby Bye. We did for Alessi. We did yesterday the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters in the Ladder House in New York City.
Yes.
This is why I stayed over last night, because we just played Saving the Day, Ghostbusters, and Seabird yesterday for thousands of people in the street in front of the firehouse where they filmed Ghostbusters.
See the connections? See, isn't that wild? Just yesterday.
That was yesterday. Yesterday. And I stayed over Bobby's house the night before so that we could have a rehearsal.
Yeah.
To do this thing. Bobby sent me the most loving note today, telling me, Peppy, you're my buddy. You're forever, man. I love you forever. You always make me so proud. I'm so proud to share the stage and stand with you and blah, 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 and they just, because they were signing an autograph for hours yesterday as Alessi for Saving the Day, and we got out there and we played this in the street, and these people were going to, and kids dressed up as Ghostbusters, the ambulances were there, everything, all the memorabilia. Yeah, it was something.
I will send you the link for that interview. It's very entertaining.
Please. Absolutely.
Very entertaining. I wanted to show you this. You're probably going to tell me to put this away, but do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. You see how far the collar is out from my neck? Okay. We used to do gigs. First of all, I was deathly ill when that shot was taken. I was vomiting profusely before that thing was taken, number one.
Yeah, you don't look well. You don't look well. Yeah. Yeah,
And
you don't.
when we would do gigs, people would come with the albums, go, "Where's this guy?" And they'd point to me, and they'd go, "Me." And I'd be like all of maybe 150 pounds. And they were like, "Man, you lost a lot of weight." And I go, you were like 300 pounds, man. And
you don't still have that suit, do you? You don't.
No, we rented them. See, that whole thing was my idea.
Okay.
Because what happened was when we got signed, well, obviously I met them in Hair, in the original Broadway production of Hair.
Yeah.
And then we became really close in there, and we were just practical jokers in that cast, and we did crazy things within that show. And Bobby told me just yesterday, because I was telling him how that when I got into the show was because the girl who was in the show, Dolores Hall, was an amazing singer. She had cut 4 of my songs. She had a deal on United Artists. And a guy by the name of Tom Bones Malone, who's probably one of the most famous trombone players in the world. He was, he's the Blues Brothers. He was the trombone player in the Letterman band for the entire run. Him, Willie, Paul Schaefer, and stuff like that. Tom and I were good buddies. We share the same birthday next Sunday. And Tom had called me up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this record, and the producer's looking for songs. You have anything you want to play him?" So he put me on with the producer. I played him a bunch of material. They ended up cutting 4 of my songs, and Dolores was in Hair.
Okay.
And I'd already known Shelley Plimpton, because Shelley Plimpton, who was the original member in Hair, she was a waitress at the Night Owl Cafe before she ever got into Hair. So I knew Shelley from then. I was like, "Oh my God, Shelley, I'll go to see Shelley," and all this kind of stuff. Long story short, Dolores says, "Hey, man, you'd be great for the show. They're looking for somebody down there to assume the lead, and you'd be killer." So what happened was she set up an audition for me, and she lived next door to Dakota. I have John Lennon stories too, and so she lived next door to Dakota. She said, "Why don't you come down here? I'll go down with you. I'll take you to the studio. Come down with me to the theater." So I said, "Oh, Dolores, thank you so much. Great." So we get out of the train station. Well, I'm 5 blocks away, and I'm walking towards the theater, and I'm seeing all these kids lined up, and I'm not even putting it together because it's 5 blocks,
Yeah.
We're still walking, and there's still kids. And then I realize these are kids all auditioning for the show. And I go, "Dolores, are all these kids auditioning?" She said, "Yes, but you don't have to be concerned with that." And so I was like, "Peppy, shut up. Just do it." I tell Bobby Alessi this story. Bobby Alessi yesterday tells me he was on that line with Billy to audition, and that he saw my audition and he hated me. He said, "Look at this fucking guy. He's gorgeous. He looks great. He sings his fucking ass off." And Bobby told me yesterday, I never knew this till yesterday, that they auditioned 3 times to get into that show.
Oh, wow. Well,
And they
tell a story of another audition where one came out first, and then the other one came out, and then they thought, "Hey, you just came out."
And they sang the same song. Yeah, he told me that yesterday. Me and you, all our time in Barnaby Bye, they'd be sleeping with the same girl even. They were like, those guys were notorious. We'd be at the Hyatt House, which was nicknamed the Riot House in LA. And Bobby walked into Billy's room. Billy, here, take my bathing suit. There's a gorgeous girl in my room. These guys,
they told some of those. They told some of those stories in the video I'll send you. We
would sit and go, And we'd wait until the girl would realize, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, she'd be looking like, wait a minute, which one's Billy? And everyone would be laughing, you know. Oh my God, those
Yeah.
guys were something else. So, needless to say, we did that. We played one show at a place called Kenny's Castaway when it was up in the upper east side. And where I'm staying right now, my buddy Jonathan was our first manager. And he's the guy that got that gig for us opening up for Mary Clayton, who had just come off of the road with Rolling Stone. Jonathan and I have been friends for years and ever and ever. We stayed friends. You know, he obviously took it on the chin with Barnaby Bye when, you know, the twins didn't want to be with him as a manager and all this kind of stuff. You know, show there was a little bad blood there, but it's all these years later and everything, you know, they're all my dear friends. And so, so we played one show. We rehearsed 5 days in my apartment. No amps, no nothing. We just slapped some songs together and we got up and played. And who's in the audience? Ahmet Ertegun.
Oh, okay, right.
And we were supposed to do 2 sets. And I remember after our first set, Ahmet Ertegun comes up to me. He goes, hey, kid, I like your band. I like your band. And I was like, immediately I went, wait a minute, I know who this guy is. I didn't even know his name. I said, I see him every week in Billboard. I know who this guy is. And Ahmed says, what are you doing? Well, we have to do one more set. He goes, well, come with me. Come back to my house for a few minutes.
Yeah.
We go back to Ahmed's house. Within 2 weeks, we were signed to Atlantic.
Wow. Yeah.
But then we made mistakes because now we're Ahmed's pets, which means the word around the label was like, don't go near those guys. Because if you fuck it up, you don't have a job. They're Ahmed's pet projects. And we only told Ahmed we would sign with Atlantic if he co-produced. He's like, oh, yeah, sure. You know. Meanwhile, Ahmed was never around. You know, Ahmed was off with Led Zeppelin or Donny Hathaway or Bette Midler, you know, and we're left to our own devices in the studio with Les Paul's son, Gene Paul, who was our engineer. We didn't even know what we were going to cut for music. We were only together 6-7 days. So what happened was, this goes back to the album cover now. So what happened is that Atlantic says, listen, we need headshot promos on you guys. So if you can come over to the label where they used to be in Columbus Circle, they used to be there. Their offices were never back at 30 Rock and Big. This is when the label was a small, more homey label, you know. They said, we hired Chuck Pullen. He's going to take some photos of you. So we show up to get headshots. And Bobby had this leather jacket and the sleeves were like down to his fingers. And we were all laughing and going, Bobby, that fucking jacket. It's like, well, Lois made for me, but it's too big, you know? So she was like, so he was getting upset and going, all right, I'll put something else. We said, no, Bobby. No, the jacket's great. Leave it. It was good. It's only a headshot. No one will see any of that. And that's when I went, hey, why don't we call the album Room to Grow and go get Fat Man vaudeville suits
Yes.
at this costuming house called Brooks Van Horn. I said, this way we can grow into whoever the hell we're going to become. And they all thought it was a good idea. Then there was a costuming house, which I knew from Hair, called Brooks Van Horn. I don't even think they're in existence. So we called them up. We walked the halls. We got these big Fat Man vaudeville suits as much as we could. And we said, we were laughing our asses off. We thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But they stuck me in the front. I look like I'm 350 pounds. So every single gig we did, I'd have these gorgeous girls come up to me going, man, you were really fat. You're this guy? I go, don't you see the collars out to here? That was nobody got it.
They didn't catch on to that.
But we have a show on June 29th, which is why I'm staying in New York. So we'll rehearse for that. Then I'll go back down to Florida. Then I'll come back in September. We have another show at the Bolton Center on September 21st. And I guess that'll do it for this year. But Barnaby Bye is very special because singing with identical voices, it's just, even though it's so funny because we all became successful in our own rights, but Barnaby Bye never really happened. I mean, we're in the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, and on Long Island, we can go anywhere and, have a night showing and stuff like that. But most people don't really know Barnaby Bye as much as they'll know me from the Magoos or, writing for Cher or Kiss at different people and stuff like that, And same thing with Alessi, they'll know Saving the Day. In Europe, they're known for Laurie and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I still get a rush when I sing with them.
Yeah.
Because it's like nobody on the earth can do this other than us three. And no one sounds like us. And it's like being in the middle of a beehive or something, what I envision drone bees feeling like when they're in with the queen bee, it's just a magical little thing that you go like, wow, only we can do this, whether we happened or not. It doesn't matter to me because it's such a great feeling when I do it with them, no matter what, like singing Saving the Day yesterday and Seabird and stuff. This, it's one thing that Alessi made their records, but when Barnaby Bye embraces the Alessi wing of it, man, it's good. And the same thing with me. I do one of my songs from Balance, No Getting Around My Love, and we kill that thing. And it is so good. And I asked Bobby, like, hey, for the show, do you want to do anything else? You want to change some of the, maybe do something that, maybe we should start with something else. He goes, Peppy, No Getting Around My Love.
Yeah.
That's our signature, man. All I know is every time we do that song, the audience is in awe and it just sets the tone. So he goes, no, man, let's just do No Getting Around My Love. It's just it's something that's magical. And that's that feeling that I always got with him that happened in the dressing rooms of Hair in between shows where we'd sit in the dressing room, we'd pull out a guitar and we'd sing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow. I was like, I'm with the Everly Brothers here. It was like,
right.
And that's the magic of Barnaby Bye for me. So it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of me, but I love to read that. And the fact that Bobby just told me that story yesterday, that it took him 3 tries, and it wasn't until they did, because he was pissed off. They didn't know they were going to sing the same song. Billy, what song are you going to sing? He goes, well, I'm going to sing that song. And then they said, well, fuck it. They both did it. And then they came out and they go like, weren't you just here? Didn't you just do this? I go, oh no, that was my brother. And they went, wait a minute. Bring your brother out here.
Exactly.
I'd never heard that story till yesterday.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be in for a treat. You may know a lot of the stuff they talked about, but you'll still be
I'm
in
sure.
for a treat.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask
and
you,
I know the stuff they didn't talk about.
Right. I'm sure they kept some of it under taps for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask about when you in 2008, you, Ralph Scala, and Jeff Daking reunited for a couple of shows. One being with one of my all-time favorites, the Zombies. Do you remember that show?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was at
Colin Blunstone.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the venue that was at. The Magoos and the Zombies was a fabulous show. That was great, and loving the Zombies so much.
Yeah,
I think the Zombies may have been one of the first rock shows I ever saw.
Is that right, man?
Yeah,
I've never seen
I'll never forget because they had light bulbs set up on top of the organ.
Uh-huh.
And so when the organ started, the lights would go, It was like chaser lights.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first actual rock concert I ever went to was the Zombies. And I and the thing that I loved about the gig we did was hearing Colin warm up
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
the shows in an empty venue, walking around the whole place for an hour, 2 hours, warming up his voice. I was like, wow.
Yes.
I was so impressed. And they're good friends to the Magoos. We
Right, okay.
we share a
still good
kinship
friends.
with them. Yeah, we
Yep.
share a kinship. Yeah, yeah, you know,
Well,
and they,
put in a good word for me with Colin, because I reached out to him before. I haven't heard anything back, about doing an interview. But yeah,
oh, okay,
I would love
yeah,
to talk with him. Yeah, that would be
yeah.
great.
Well,
That'd
the
be
key is through his buddy there,
Rod Argent,
come on.
Rod
Yeah,
Argent.
Rod.
Mhm.
Rod seems to keep more of a presence with
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
and
right,
you know, yeah. Well,
right,
after
right.
this, you know,
I got that feeling about Colin. He was a little bit more reticent, little reserved, shy.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's shy. Yeah, he's got a
yeah,
pleasant things, and just the guy's so
yeah.
amazing,
Right.
so
His
great.
voice.
And
His voice.
but Rod's a little more personable. He's a little more
Yeah,
extroverted, you know.
right.
And I would say if you did both of them,
Wouldn't that be something to get both of them together? Wow.
yeah, if you did both of them on a Zoom, that would be the
Uh-huh.
way to go.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, that's
yeah,
the way to get to
yeah.
Colin more.
Right,
But
right,
if you remind me on that, because you see
right.
how brain dead I was with all this, um, or maybe when this comes out, you know,
Yeah.
I can messenger Colin,
Okay.
messenger actually Rod. I would message your Rod
Yeah,
and
yeah,
say, hey, this guy is very knowledgeable and blah 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 blah, and I
yeah,
just did a real, um, you know,
yeah.
I would have no problem doing that, you know, and then I would do it through Facebook and Messenger
Yes.
to
Yeah,
Rod,
that's
you
what
know.
I normally go that route. That route.
Yeah, and that's what I would do because I know we're still friends on Facebook, and we feature a lot of their stuff on the Magoo page and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well,
Because
yes, well, good. I mean, one more thing I wanted to talk about. Speaking of being shy, I know Chuck Barris was in front of an audience, because you could just see it. When he would talk, he would look down and he would look away when he was talking. He didn't look comfortable at all up there,
yeah,
with the Gong Show. But
yeah.
talk about that Gong Show live. That's
Okay, so
doing it.
okay, well, you know, Carmine
Yes, yes,
Appice,
right,
right? World renowned drummer.
yes.
Um, Carmine's wife, common law wife slash live in whatever, is a woman by the name of Leslie Gold.
Oh, okay.
And Leslie in New York was known as the radio chick.
Okay.
And she had a very lucrative radio career here for decades and decades and decades. She met Carmine by interviewing him on her radio show, and they became an item. And so they lived together. They actually just bought a place down near me in Lake Worth, down in Florida, Lake Worth Beach, and so I get to see them down there as well, which is nice. But Leslie had Chuck Barris on her show, and she was enamored by him. She loved, plus all the stuff that went about him about being a CIA operative and
Yeah.
all the stuff. So she was immersed in all that. So she had gone to ask him, like, whatever happened to the Gong Show, who owns the rights to that? And he said, oh, I sold it to Sony like 20, 30 years ago for 20 million bucks. I cashed in and Sony owns it. So she goes, oh, okay. So she had this brainiac idea to do this show called, which was a scripted kind of recreation of the Gong Show TV
Yeah.
show, only live in as a live venue, and she's Harvard business grad. So what happened was she had called Sony up and said, listen, I'm inquiring, I'd like to do this, I understand you have the rights, and I'd like to maybe do this, this live version of the Gong Show, and would you guys license it to me and stuff like that? And I said, well, no, we tried something with Comedy Central and we're not interested, go away. And she was like,
Wow.
oh, really? But, 6 months later, she tried him again. Said, look, we told you we're not interested. Go away. We don't care. We don't care. Bye, goodbye. And we got to the upper levels of Sony in Japan even. And they were like, no, thank you, goodbye.
Yeah.
Harvard business grad. What does she do? She goes online and she finds some guy who has the trademark to the Gong Show and buys it off of him.
Bought it from him. Wow. Okay.
So now she owns the trademark to the Gong Show. She goes back to Sony. I still want to do this. And they said, look, we told you we're not interested. She said, well, guess what? They went, what? And he goes, you can't do anything either because I own the trademark.
Right.
They went fucking nuts. They were like, what? They were so fucking pissed off. She was like, I own the trademark. You can't do a goddamn thing without me. So she cut a deal with him.
Yeah.
She ended up giving them back the trademark if she could do the show in perpetuity, would have exclusive rights and all this kind of stuff. I had met her doing it when she was doing a radio interview. And I had set this little internet radio interview up for a girlfriend of mine who I was doing at the time, who was a celebrity makeup artist. And she wanted to do things in radio. So she found some guy to host it and everything. And I was like, Mo, I called her Mo. Her name was Marianne Morrison. I said, Mo, Peppy, you have to get me people. You know everybody. You have to get me people. I don't know anybody. So I kept getting people. So I knew this casting director who was Leslie's casting director. Yeah, he was Warner Brothers casting director. He was the guy who casted the talent for her to the Gong Show. And she came on, and when I saw what she was doing and what she had, it was really bare bones. And I was like, and I'd met her and we became friends. I was like, Leslie, I don't get this. Is a major brand. Like, yeah, but theater's a tough thing, and I don't know, I'm kind of breaking out of radio. I'm trying to get into it, and this is as far as I've gotten. It's really hard to do. And I said, gotta dress it up. And then I bought a friend of mine who was in signage, who does all the signage for the Broadway shows. And all of a sudden we started making signs and things and all this kind of stuff. And then Carmine brought a guy in that does sets and things like this. And little by little, so then she started making me an associate producer. And then I had good ideas and we started doing it. And now we're dear friends, Leslie and I. And she's a tough cookie, but she's the best. I love her dearly, And so we did a ton of shows, and the shows were fucking hysterical. Yeah. We had Amazing Amy, an 80-year-old toothless contortionist who, I mean,
80 years old. Wow.
The acts that we hired, but they were like professional acts that really did this thing, but it was like insane stuff, and we couldn't make any money with it because 14 acts, they all had to get paid. They had to wait all around for the end of the show for the curtain call where the audience would guess. Then Leslie had all her celebrity Comedy Central guys come on to be guest judges. What was it? Chuck Neese was one of them. He was fabulous. This guy, Tom Slew, who's a regular on Greg Gutfeld, and has his own show on Fox now. He was one of our judges, and Leslie was the judge. And we had a basic script thing, and the shows were fucking hysterical. I mean, the things that the bits that these guys did one get him out in a Victoria's Secrets outfit, Vladimir or something like that, with wings and high heels and go-go boots, and was stunning, and would balance a lit candelabra on the edge of a dagger, and while he did complete splits, kept it, and then he'd like, the thing would come down and grab it and blow crowd pleases. The audience would go nuts over there. Carmine and I laughed so hard. I saw things that was so funny. We would laugh and people fucking loved it. But at the end of the day, Leslie was losing money. So then I said to Leslie, Leslie, she goes, I don't know that I keep doing this. I said, well, cut your acts down. Why don't you cut your acts down? And then she said, yeah, but Peppy, if I cut the acts down, then the show suffers. And I don't have a long show and a short and all this stuff. And I said, and I came up with this idea for it. I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we cut the acts down and film there's life stories, fictitious life stories about them, so we can go from 14 acts to 9 acts. But before the acts come down, we'll do this whole thing about like Vladimir, our guy, I forget his name now, it was something magnificent. But he was like stunning, and the go-go, he looked like Gene Simmons as a drag queen, the sparkle, and he was huge, and he'd come out and he'd do this things with the swords, and people would be like, holy fuck, and stuff like that. And he was from Russia originally. And I say, so why don't we make up this story about him and like that he had to leave because his life was threatened because he was gay and all this kind of stuff. He wanted to come to the America where he could act out and be free and, all these things. So we filmed all these fictitious stories.
Oh.
And we'd show it before the act would come out, and then the act would come out. So we could cut it down from 14 acts to 9. And then we did that in Civic Auditoriums. We did that for a while and everything. And again, it was great. But at the end of the day, Leslie had to pay everybody. She had to pay all these things. And she couldn't find a way to make money. I'm sorry she never filmed it and just got it as a live streaming thing.
Right. Yeah.
And stuff.
That would have been something.
But I think she kind of burnt out. But a lot of that stuff is hard to transpose. Live from this, little people on the cell phones, But oh my God, it was so much fun,
Well, how long did it run? How long did it run for?
Oh, maybe 2 years.
Okay, well that's a good run.
We did location things. We'd go to different theaters in New Jersey, Connecticut. We had a standing gig at the Cutting Room.
Yeah.
In New York, we did once a month in the Cutting Room. We did 18 shows at the Cutting Room, and the audience would die laughing. Some of the funniest stuff, but these were all professional, really fun comedians, and they were always scripted, but it was a lot of fun, and it was like a reproduction of the show. And we had an MC who did the Chuck Barris deal, and he was very funny, and he would crack the hell up out of people, and then we give cheesy gifts away.
That's like that's the way to do it.
It was a lot of fun, and we got a great friendship out of it for sure.
Well, there you go. Well, you mentioned just yesterday with the Alessies. What else is on the agenda or on the immediate horizon for you? What else are you working on or doing?
Well, I have Warhol is going to be a big one, but my job's done with that for the moment, so I just got to see where they're going to mount this thing and what they want to do. But Sir Trevor Nunn's a knighted sir, so and he's got a heavy name in the industry. So does Lieber, Steve Lieber, who's Steve did the Moscow Circus, he did Beatlemania, he did Ninja Turtles Live, Ice Capades, he did a ton of things. And then there was his rock and roll roster, which I was on, he had a partner, David Krebs. They were called Lieber Krebs. And at one point they had Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Scorpions, Golden Earring, AC/DC, Def Leppard, Joan Jett, Michael Bolton, and I was one of their baby artists. But they liked me because I danced in theater and in rock.
Yeah.
And they produced my musical Zen Boogie in 1978 in Beverly Hills. And that got me Cher to cut a tune out of that, you know. So, you know, and he's the one who called me up and said, hey, I'm doing Warhol. Do you want? I was like, oh, absolutely. Because, you know, I go back to the days of Warhol.
Right.
So, you know, and, you know, I spent many a day in the same space with him and, you know, and stuff like that.
Right.
But one of the things that really I'm passionate about, which is on my to-do list before I kick, is Steve Lieber put me in touch with Stan Lee in 1979 after I did Zen Boogie, and Stan loved Zen Boogie. So Steve wanted me to write a superhero musical.
Oh, okay.
And he put me together with Stan. And I was flying out to Stan. I mean, I was like, you mean Stan Lee? Like Spider-Man Stan Lee? Yeah. Like, God, yes, Steve. Yeah, that would be great. Oh my God. And so I'm flying out to Stan's condo in Westwood, and we're talking over treatments. And that's my treasure chest. I have Stan's letterhead and his original typewritten notes on like a 1940s typewriter, you know, where our hero is a artist, comic book artist who becomes a real life. I'm going, this is fucking fabulous. This is like Stan Lee's story, you know, and stuff like that. And my heart got broke because Stan had called me up and said, Peppy, they can't cut a deal. I said, who's they? He goes, Marvel, Cadence, the parent company, and Lieber. And Lieber was like, Peppy, they licensed all the characters out. I can't get anything. I figured if you had something with Stan, at least it would hold up. Maybe they'd do something. So Stan was like, you're a great guy, Ben. We're banging our heads against the wall for nothing. So I put my head between my legs. Rare for Manhattan, you know.
What was that? What was that?
Yeah.
What
Anything that flies over Manhattan is suspect, you know.
Oh.
So for me anyway, you know. So so in the year 2000, I went, you know what? It's still a great idea. I said, but I can't use Stan's idea. I'm going to write my own characters. I'm going to do this so I don't have to license anything. And I wrote a show called X-Star about a ex-fighter pilot who becomes a cop and goes on this high-risk suicide mission because Earth has to migrate because we're running out of food, fuel, water, all this stuff. And he collides with an extraterrestrial energy star and gets the powers of the universe and becomes X-Star. And this took me 5 years to write and record. I've been sitting on it all this time for 20 years because it's a gargantuan thing to get up. But now, because of AI,
right.
The production possibilities for this thing to either do a live show, but more important, an animation.
Yeah, that's right.
Which would be a pop opera animation of a superhero. Really doesn't, there's nothing out there that exists. And so I've started to put some of that together. And a buddy of mine has put me together with a company that does motion capture. So that's one of my, that's my big bucket list thing, that it's something I'd love to see the light of day because it's my best work. And I've worked so hard on it. And I did so much. And then about 8 years ago, I hired a bunch of friends, paid them all to come in and sing roles and sing cast things and stuff like this. So I've been putting little presentations together on that. And I'll go to my grave trying to do that one.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, yeah, like you said, we'll see, just keep the fires burning, right? Yeah.
But, I'm too stupid to quit. My ears are gone. I'm definitely left there. The cataracts are going. The arthritis is starting to show up. And I've had, I don't know, you probably can't see this in my hand, but you'll see these little slit.
Okay, I can see.
You're right. So both wrists, thumbs, 8 fingers have all had surgery.
Oh,
For
okay.
wrists for carpal tunnel, and this was trigger finger, which
Oh,
happened in 8 of my fingers over 4 surgeries and 6 months to kind of bounce it back. But I'm too stupid to quit, and I can be a studio rat all day long. So
yeah.
I still crank stuff out in the studio that I love. I have a video that I really love. If any, I wrote a song called "The Color of Life," which is kind of special. I have it up on YouTube. "Color of Life," Peppy Castro.
Okay.
I did
Check that
that after COVID. I got a bunch of things up on YouTube. I got "Here for the Ride" is up. Peppy Castro. I have another thing called yeah. There's my buddy Jonathan up there, first manager of Barnaby Bye. He's looking down. Yeah. Yeah.
Say hi. Say hi.
I told him about Viper and all that. So, and then there's Maggie.
Yeah.
The cutthroat Jack Russell. I mean, forget it. The things will rip anything's head out. But all this different stuff. And there's another one I have called I Don't Know Why, which is really great, which I did in COVID and stuff. But so if any of your audience wants to go and take a look at some of that stuff, that's still out there. Balance. I know we didn't touch on balance, but pick up any balance stuff. Balance the band, in for the count, breaking away.
Breaking away, yeah. I love the drumming. I had to say that I love the drumming at the beginning of Breaking Away.
Breaking Away. That was Andy Newmark. Andy Newmark on Breaking Away. Andy was he was one of the best studio drummers out. He did all Roxy music, all the Donny Hathaway stuff. Played all the Carly Simon singles, and he was one of Arif Martin's go-to guys. Him and Willie Weeks were rhythm section that did tons of stuff for Atlantic, and so Andy and I have been good buddies. And he was great. So I enjoyed this, Greg. Sorry for all the.
Oh no, we made it happen. We made it happen.
Oh yeah, no. You were diligent. When I saw today was 1 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock, I said, "Oh God, no,
not again."
A brief moment of silence for my career. I'm like,
right.
But I have to say, it's exclusive to you. Everything else I've done has been spot on, but this is great. And feel free to follow up with anything or stuff like that.
I will send you that Alessi.
Alessi,
Definitely send you that.
And I'll send you some stuff from yesterday. It's pretty fun for them.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Well, Billy's gonna make a movie, so Billy documented things, so that should be fun. Yes, but you got an idea of that. See, Billy's wit is more drier than Bobby's.
Right. It is.
Bobby's more slapstick. Billy's dry.
Right. It is.
Oh my God. And we have pet names for each other. My Barnaby Bye nickname is Inu Peppanuti. Billy's is Winky or Willem. I call him Winky or Willem. Bobby is Rojas, which was and now I call him Roe, which was Rojas Puente. I used to call him. So we have all these little stupid names for each other, but it's still all good. Greg, a pleasure, man.
Yes, it was a pleasure for me too, Peppy. And we'll be in touch, and I'll send you the link once I get it edited a little bit, and you can post it. On your social.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm 5,000 strong on my private page, and then the social stuff. Yeah, we'll put it out there. All right.
Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Yeah. Thanks. I can go back to my subconscious now.
There you go.
Thanks again, buddy. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.